Alright everybody, time for another video. Um, this one is in relation to a better understanding of some of the game's mechanics, because let's face it, a lot of these mechanics are not explained very well, especially during the tutorial that they make you go through. There's a lot of things that are kind of confusing at the start, and a lot of things that are rather misleading, which will actually do you a lot of harm than good if you don't understand them. First of which that I'll get into is this little bar down here, the tri-colored bar. Green, blue, and yellow. That gets a lot of people in trouble for a number of reasons. First instinct is to see this bar and say, oh, my residential and my industrial are at the top. I must build more until it goes down. Well, that's not always the case, and there's ways to lower that without having to expand further and farther. One of which is by density levels, which I talked about previously in another video. Now, for example, this will pop up, and you'll bring up your little thing, and it'll say worker shortage, and it'll say your industrial demand is at max, your residential demand is at such and such. Now, a way to lower all of this is to raise your density levels to tier 2, tier 3. And this will consequently lower your demand, simply for the fact that when you raise a house like this, which is tier 1 density, to a tier 2 density house, which is like this, more people will be able to move in, which has a domino effect. The more people that move in means you have a higher population. The higher population you have, the bigger the workforce you have, which will increase, the people you need for your factory jobs and your commercial jobs. Once they're at max capacity, they'll also upgrade to tier 2, which will lower your commercial demand since you have bigger commercial plots, because they lower demand as well. So it's not always better to, look at this and see, oh my god, I have such a huge demand that I have to put, lay down more plots and do this and do that. No, always make sure that, the plots that you have selected for, either residential, commercial, or industrial, make sure they're all at the tier that you want them, i.e. tier 2, tier 3 of density, because raising them up in tier will lower your demand. Now, if you're at the point to where you're at the maximum tier, then yeah, that's when you need to branch out. On a second note about that, if you do have plots that aren't fully developed and you start branching out, all that's going to do is cause a bigger demand for commercial and industrial. If you zone out with more residential, it's going to cause a bigger demand for low wealth, middle wealth, or high wealth for commercial, which you'll see in turn, and it'll turn into a vicious cycle. So you always have to make sure that everything you have is upgraded in density. That will alleviate a lot of your problems. Now, on to another mechanic that causes a lot of confusion for people is tourist. tourist. There's a lot of ways to ensure that your tourists keep coming into your city. And there are ways to get more tourists to come into your city. And there's also ways to block tourists from coming into your city. The major one of these is traffic. As silly as it sounds, if you have a poor street system planned out, and you have, squiggly little streets all over here, and you got snakes over here, and you have a poor city laid out streetwise, and you have a lot of traffic jams, that will turn tourists away, and or tourists will not be able to get to where they're going in your city, which is a tourist attraction. Now, you can increase the amount of tourists you gain through a couple of options. For the gambling houses, there's upgrade items like the signs, and there's add-on buildings which will also increase the amount of tourists that come in. For example, on the very starting lounge or starting casino, there's a lounge add-on that you can put on, which will increase your tourist medium tourist count per day by 540. Excuse me, compared to the 80 that you're getting. And there's also cultural items like the Expo Center and various other buildings which will draw tourists to your city as well. All of those play a key part to tourists. Another thing that needs to be touched on about mechanics is streets and traffic. A lot of people seem to be having issues with streets and traffic. I'll unpause this, and you can see my streets are traffic free. And where there is traffic, it's not bad. It's very well maintained, and this traffic that you see coming through right here, this is all tourist traffic going to my casinos. And they're not clogged, they're not having to stop, it's all simple. There's a couple of key points that really need to be touched on when dealing with traffic. First and foremost, when you start a city, always, and I mean always, have your connection to the other regions connected with an avenue, like I did here. This was a medium density avenue that I expanded to about right here, and I just built up on it. And there's a number of different reasons why you want to do this. One is to help ease traffic through the main parts of your city. And as you progress farther with your city, this will come out here and you'll do whatever you want with it and loop it around and take it to other places. But the reason why this avenue is so important, which a lot of people don't know and the game doesn't tell you, is later on when you start getting high density areas, the traffic becomes a real issue. But because of this avenue that you so smartly put at the beginning of your game and you built on as the game progressed, you can now put streetcars in the middle of this avenue anywhere this avenue goes, which will at later points of the game when your population is much higher will alleviate a ton of traffic, and people will use it like a beast. Another thing to really get going early is a shuttle bus depot. That will extremely help your traffic issues starting out and later on too, once you get the max amount of shuttle buses you can per depot. And the last thing is having a good city layout, making sure that all your areas have multiple exits. You don't have all these cars and buses going just to, like, for instance, here. Say if you had like a medium street just going one way, you get a huge backup right there. Everyone trying to do U-turn at once. Making sure that you have a good solid street um, plan is going to help you a lot. It'll keep your traffic down and keep your all your traffic jams down to nil, as you can see with my city. There's a couple other things that are really misleading that they probably should and will change in the future. You'll get every now and then quests in your city from like the fire department or the police department like this. It'll say jail cells are at the limit, add some more or add another police station, or you'll get another quest from the police department, which I stated previously in another video, where they will say we can't keep up with the amount of crime in the city, place another police station. Most people will go, oh, okay, that's what I need to do. No, do not do that. That is the silliest thing you could do, because when you place another police station, you get a huge amount of upkeep for that police station, which is going to drastically lower your money per hour. And instead of doing that, all you simply need to do is upgrade the buildings you have instead of plopping down multiple city service buildings or whatever buildings. If you can upgrade it to the max. In the long run, it will help you, and in the short run, it'll save you quite a bit of money per hour overall with all your buildings. There's a lot of other things that's really not explained to you, like the road system, like this avenue. It's not really explained, and you really wouldn't think about having this avenue, like I did on my first playthrough, until 12 hours, 20 hours into the game, where I'm stuck with a full map and traffic jams all over my city. And then I start looking into how can I alleviate these problems, and it's like, oh, streetcars. But wait, you have to have a special sort of street to put these streetcars on, and I can't upgrade my roads to put these avenues on because they're too big and they would wipe out my sections and my zones. So another thing is pollution. When in your residential or your zoning menu, these little buttons over on the right hand side, which will show you different maps of what you have going, and one of the most important ones is wind. When you start out, you need to see where your wind is going. Like here, my wind is going in a northwestern fashion. But if I wasn't to pay attention to that, and I said, okay, well, I'm going to place all of my industrial, the bottom right, and I'm going to place my residential and my commercial up here above that, to where that pollution is floating towards, that's going to cause all kinds of havoc and problems later on in the game when your city is covered with all that pollution that your industrial zones are spilling out. So, there's stuff like that makes life easier in the long run that's not explained. And like these little pop-up messages too, worker shortage. It'll say you need to zone more residential areas to get more workers. That's not true whatsoever. Because if you still have undeveloped, residential zones that aren't tier 2 or tier 3, that's a lot of workers that you don't have. So if you can get these popped up into, from tier 1 to tier 2, that'll drastically improve your workforce and your population. So, I mean, take all these messages that you get with a grain of salt, because a lot of these will, like I said previously, they will really hurt you in the long run if you just follow them blindly. Oh. And, it's just a quick little video on some of the major things that'll really come back to bite you in the ass. Um, because they don't really do that good of a job of explaining a lot of the in and outs of the game. And that's it for this video. If there's anything else you'd like me to talk about or explain or touch on, please feel free to leave those suggestions in the comments. I will be happy as a little duck to make as many videos as you guys want, explaining whatever you guys want. I have a feeling I will be making a lot of these videos as time goes on anyway, to further help and explain, different aspects of the cities during different stages of the cities. Thank you for your time, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Have a good one.